Alright, here's that silver maple we pruned about a week or two ago. A lot of reduction pruning, a lot of smaller cuts up there. Taking some weight off the branch tips here to make sure this tree didn't fail in an ice storm or windstorm. So the tree had a lot of big reaching branches coming out over here. There's southern exposure over here. So lots of big reaching branches on this side. I cut a few back off of this side. Still has a pretty good structure. And you can see some of these small cuts we made up in here. You know, 2-3 inches, that's a fairly sizable cut right there. And some people might ask, why did I leave that stub right there? And there's a reason for that. If that branch decides to sprout out with a bunch of little sprouts, it'll sprout out mostly on the end of that stub there, while a lot of the growth goes into that little shoot right there. So 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we come in, make the cut with that stub off, cut all of those multiple sprouts off with one cut, and just let this be the new shoot. Whereas this one, we just cut it and was trying to let that branch grow from there. Another one up here, you can see I left a little stub on that one there, below what's hopefully going to be the new leader up there. So it varied. Lots of cuts over here, but you can see the size of the cuts. That's big enough to take a fairly significant amount of weight off the ends of the branches without leaving any main wounds, no big wounds on the main stems here. And leaving the tree still looking like pretty much a tree, like it's pretty much got a fairly decent shape. Then let's take a look at like some of these smaller cuts right up in here. Like that cut there. That one right there. So a lot of those cuts could have been, you know, taken back to the main stem, but there's no real need for doing that. And here's a couple small ones out here I cut back. Now let's take a look at this silver maple here. This tree was pruned by another company. I talked to the neighbor about possibly pruning it, and you can see what they did. Can you see that? Lots of small cuts, because this tree had sprouted a bunch of water sprouts out. Why did it sprout water sprouts out? Probably in response to some big cuts that were made down here. So the whole tree was full of water sprouts. There's a big cut there. And you can see they just lion's tailed this thing. There is not one piece of green on this branch all the way out to the branch tips. And then even though they took a few little cuts out there, which is good, you know, that's still a big heavy branch. It's got this pocket of decay that's going to develop right here. And they certainly could have taken a lot more weight off of those branch tips. Let's go look at that from the other side. But basically you can just see, running up and down these trunks, they lion's tailed. They took every interior limb off here. Every little sprout on this tree was taken off. You know, up to 30 feet. And then look how big and heavy that limb is. That thing needed to be shortened up. I probably would have cut the lower half of that crotch off right there and taken a bit more weight off. You could even go back on this one. Could have left that little upright right there be and taken this whole end of this branch off. And then those tips are kind of heavy out there. Alright, so this is the story of two silver maples. That's the one we pruned. That's the one another company pruned. Ours still has pretty good shape. We've taken the branch tips in quite a bit. Taking a good bit of weight off of there. There's no chance they're going to fail in an ice storm or snowstorm. This tree, on the other hand, was lion's tailed. And with a lot of weight left on a couple of these long reaching horizontal limbs. But that's not the worst of it. We got a third tree to get involved here. Let's go take a look. And here's our third tree right here. Another silver maple right in the hood. And we got a couple of major big cuts. 1, 2, 3 there. And again, he stripped the whole thing. Let's take a look at this one. That's the big nasty right there. That's 4. That's the old one. So this tree is going to be toast. I call that chainsaw-induced decay. So there's a cut somebody made 20 years ago, 15 years ago maybe. Guy might not even be in business anymore. No one remembers who made the cut. Took off a big lead that was out over here. Now we got a bunch of decay in there, and we got a second big cut made here. That's gonna decay too, a little rip down the side, not the prettiest thing, but that cut, that's like 16 inches there. Maybe 20. And then, any branches left down low here at all? Nothing at all, everything was stripped out. This little cut right here, that little sprout was there for a reason. It's trying to put on more wood around the weakened area. So the tree needs to have that. And let's see if this cut up here, was this an old cut or a new cut? There's another old cut right there. But then he put the new cut right next to it. There's the old cut, and he put the new cut right next to it. And everything, again, is stripped all the way up on this tree. There's not a piece of green branch. Well, maybe that right there, that little thing right there. Other than that, I'm not seeing anything green on this tree for 35 feet. So, poor tree. It's a shame, nice tree. Didn't have to be this way. Silver maples particularly, as you can see here, is particularly susceptible to decay from these large cuts, but no tree is going to handle a 20-inch cut long term. You got to think in tree terms. Tree could live 150, 200 years in a suburban setting. And we think in human terms of, okay, I'll be back in 3 years, 5 years to prune it again. And here's another tree in the neighborhood I want to show you real quick. Pretty sizable pin oak. It was pruned some years ago by a fellow in the neighborhood who's a really nice guy, mostly a landscaper more than a tree guy. And it's tough to see if you can tell on video or not, but he stripped this whole tree, every lower branch on this tree. And the tree has responded by putting out all these water sprouts. But if you look carefully behind those water sprouts, there is a lot of problems with that tree. Like cankers there, decayed, old cuts, rotting out the tree. That's going to interfere with the tree's ability to transport water up to the leaves and those branch tips. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised the tree's doing as well as it is right now. Top's not doing too bad, but this tree's got issues. And I don't expect it to make it, certainly not long term, but in the meantime, he may have destabilized this thing. And we've got pockets of decay in here, which who knows how bad they are. And that whole top of that tree on top of it's sitting out here all by itself. So that tree could end up on the house, which would do a lot of damage. So I tried to kindly say something about it to him, and he was defending his practice. He said, oh, the guy wanted to cut the whole tree down. I had to do that to save the tree. Well, he didn't really save the tree. And it's a shame. And while we're at it, let's take a look at one more tree. Another big silver maple backyard. I looked at this tree a couple years ago. It's hanging in there. Pretty misshapen, and that cut, whoever made that cut, condemned the tree to an early death. That decay eventually is going to get through the trunk of that tree, destabilize it, and that whole tree is going to be coming down in the storm. So, it's a sad thing. And it happens all the time. I see it all the time. Hopefully the industry changes, people learn,
And certainly YouTube is a good way to do that.